Storyteller number 9, Brian E. Smith. Brian, come on up to the stage. So for Brian E. Smith, he's our videographer tonight too.
Hi, gang. First time caller, long time listener. Have you ever had the perfect job? I've had several. I've been cursed, actually, to have several perfect jobs. One of those jobs was as the only white boy, as a lifeguard, with about 450 kids each day. That was a lot of fun. I worked at Actors Theater for a while. I worked at the Young Center for a while. One of the best jobs I ever had was working for a group of lawyers in Washington, D.C. Talk about living on the edge. But tonight, I'm going to tell you about the best job I ever had. There's a place downtown on 4th Street called the Louisville Palace Theater. Anybody ever been to the Palace Theater? For 3 years, back at the end of the 90s, before some major corporate conglomerate came in and took it over, it was owned by 2 guys, who then sold it to some local guys, who then sold it to some Texas guys, who then sold it to the national guys, who probably then sold it to the international guys. But anyway, when I was there, it was 2 guys that owned it, and it was a wonderful place. I started out by selling tickets in the box office part-time. Every other weekend I'd come in, spend a couple hours, do a decent job. Well, eventually, within about a year, year and a half, I became the box office manager. So now I'm taking care of this and creating tickets and talking to the promoters and counting the money, and I've gone from being a nobody to actually being a guy that had some kind of responsibility at the Palace. Now, real quickly about the Palace, a couple of things for those of y'all who have been down there and enjoyed the place, because I love the Louisville Palace Theater. It was built in 1927 at a cost of about $2.5 million, which means they couldn't build it today. It's just an amazing place. The guy that built it built 50, basically the same design of the Palace Theater. There used to be 50 of these theaters that stood throughout the world. Today there are less than 14 of those theaters, and the largest one is down in Australia. It holds about 5,000 people. The one that we have right around the corner here, it seats about 2,700 people. But anyway, that's kind of boring stuff. His face is up on the ceiling. You go up and look at the faces on the ceiling. Those of you that have been in have seen the faces on the ceiling. His face actually is on the ceiling. It's the one that kind of looks like Joseph Stalin. You got to know where it's at. Anyway, that's kind of boring stuff. The best story I ever had while I was in the employ of the 2 gentlemen, James Taylor had come to play a sold-out show, which he used to do about every year. And James Taylor's show was great because it would sell out, and then you could just forget about it until the night of the show. So the night of the show comes, it sells out. Night of the show, I'm taking the financial reports backstage to the manager. Manager gets the reports, and he's like very happy because he's got a lot of money in his pocket. And he's like, hey, would you like to come and meet James? And I'm not really one of these guys to abuse my position, but I'm like, James Taylor? Okay. Cool, it's James Taylor, all right. So he takes me over, and there's James sitting in the corner in the green room, and he's playing his guitar, and he's just being, fucking James Taylor. And he's like, hey man, you're Brian, right? And I'm like, my God, you know my name. Great. So he's like, hey man, can you come and sit down for a minute, Brian? Yeah, James, sure, I can come and sit down for a minute. This is great, sweet baby James. Yeah. And he's tuning his guitar and being James Taylor. He's like, hey, can you drink on the job, Brian? Well, with you I can, sure. So we go over there, I go to the cooler and bring back a couple of Rolling Rocks. I'm sitting there having a Rolling Rock with James Taylor, and this is, this is great. It was just as cool as it sounds. I hate to brag, but it was pretty cool to have a crew with James Taylor. The greatest thing that ever happened to me at the Louisville Palace, after the corporate guys came in and took over, and I was no longer employed by the Palace Theater, I was doing the volunteer work. I would come in and help the little ladies down to their seats, tell you where your tickets are at, say, yeah, you've got a great seat when you're actually up in the corner over there. Yeah, this is great, it doesn't matter where you sit. Well, one day I walk in, there's this cute little redhead, and there weren't a lot of young girls that came to do this ushering thing, and so she immediately caught my eye. Unfortunately, it was this like hippie show where all the kids were 7 different kinds of high, and everybody just wanted to touch her and be like, yeah, cool, groovy, doing a little twirly dance. And I'm working the front row, and I can see her working in the balcony over there. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait at the end of the show. I'm going to go say hi to this girl. She's so cute. And the kids scared her away. Oh, fuck. She's gone. Next week, it's a Kenny Loggins show. Real nice, real laid-back show. You know, okay, she's got to be a Kenny Loggins, right? Okay, no, nowhere to be found. I spend most of my time talking to my friend Randy out in the lobby selling merchandise. Next week, however, is a Travis Tritt show. And country fans, I'm sorry, are the worst. You know, sorry, it's just the truth. Anyway, it is, you know. Well, it's Travis Tritt. I'm like, she's nowhere going to be found. These hippie kids scared her away. I walk in the door and boom, there she is taking tickets up to the balcony. I'm like, okay, I'm not wasting a second. And I walk over to her and I say, hello, how you doing? My name's Brian. I used to be somebody around here, blah, blah, blah. I know that you get off at intermission. How about I come find you at intermission and we'll watch the show together? She's like, okay, cool, whatever, you know. Only later did I find out that she came to the palace to meet boys, so it worked. So, anyway, I might just get in the way of the story. But, anyway, I meet her with the ticket stubs that a friend of mine has given me. He had to leave the show early. My luck. He's like, hey, here's some tickets. Killer, great, good seats even. At intermission, okay. You know, do I? Yes, no, you know, am I going to do it? Am I going to not? Am I? Okay, yes. Go meet Jill. Go meet the little redheaded girl. Say you got the tickets. 1, 2, 3. Jill, I got the tickets. She's like, great, cool, let's go sit down. She's shaking me off like at the Oscars. And so she comes back and we sit in these great seats and watch Travis Tritt, and it turns out she's this huge country music fan. She loves the show. To bring it home, we talked on the phone for 4 hours. Our first date was 3 days later. We were engaged 9 months after that. We were married 9 months after that, and it will be 10 years in August.
James Taylor, I was thinking I was going a different direction. That he would just get you in trouble on your job, like getting you caught drinking on the job. And I had this whole fantasy of just James Taylor going around, and he's always kind of playing the guitar while he does it. Gets people in trouble. You can drink on the job, right? You take some money out of your mom's purse, right? You can borrow the car tonight. Tell us about your favorite guilty pleasure at the office. The building where I work houses several different departments. Often people come from other departments because they've locked their keys in their offices. Seriously, every day. And they come to get a master key from me. I used to just let them borrow the key, but then I realized every other department had a candy dish on the receptionist's desk. Now I go with them and grab candy to fill my own bowl. I was an admin at the world's largest office supply company. I was in charge of approving use of the box seats at Yankee Stadium, and I was the person who fetched you and brought you to HR to get fired. If you were an a-hole, but were getting tickets, I would walk toward you sadly, averting your gaze, just to scare you a little bit. Tell us about your favorite guilty pleasure at the office, buzzing my friends' apartments in a $30 million helicopter. Wow. I want to be your friend now. All right, let's get our scores for Brian. Lumberg, 8.7. All right. Water cooler, 9.0. Machine, 9.1. Let's hear it again for Brian, everybody.